Hey, and welcome to the Pursuit of Healthiness podcast. I'm your host, Winanda van Delft. I'm a health and mindset coach, graphic designer, and a cat mom. I love conversations that are more raw and deeper level, and today's episode is something special. I have not one, but two special guests today. It's Jan and Jillian Yuhas. They are international relationship and lifestyle coaches and founders of Entwined Lifestyle. They are creators of the Relationship Intelligence Method and Boundary Badass program. They've made it their mission to inspire professionals to create a remarkable relationship and live fulfilling lifestyles and set boundaries like a badass. And that's what we are going to talk about today. How do you set healthy boundaries? Welcome, Jen and Jillian, to the Pursuit of Healthiness podcast today. As I've said, I'm really excited to have you over here with me, and we are going to talk about setting healthy boundaries with relationships, everything that has to do with that. But first, can you tell a little bit about yourself, what you do, and why it's the two of you? Why are you? I would share ahead what you guys do.
So thank you for having us, and we're excited to be here. So I just want to say that we are relationship and lifestyle coaches who specialize in setting healthy boundaries within our lifestyles and relationships in order to get our needs met in terms of the bigger picture and feel respected and valued throughout all of our relationships.
Okay, nice. And you do that together. You're a sister, you're twins. You can.
Yeah, we do.
If you're watching this, you can see it.
Yeah, sometimes we coach individuals, but then sometimes we coach together too. So it just depends on our audience or clientele.
Yeah. So how did you ended up doing this together?
Our discovery to helping others started long ago. We used to volunteer at a crisis line in terms of helping teens who ran away from home. So we used to mediate between the teens and the parents and resolve the family discord and set new healthy ways of functioning for when the teen would go back home. That kind of inspired us to go into grad school. We got our master's in marriage and family therapy, which led us down the path of becoming certified coaches, certified family mediators, and body language experts. So our path just kind of went from volunteering at a very younger age, which led us into all of our different professional developments and certificates.
Oh, wow. Amazing. So how is it like to work with teens? Because I can imagine they are really difficult. I have a teenage sister. She turns 16 next month. And she is in that phase where she's like, oh, I don't care, but she does care. I think it's really fascinating to see how the teenage brain works, especially because she looks so much like me. So everything she does, I see myself. And I'm like, was I really like that in that age? You know, it's so funny how they see the world and how they perceive everything. So how do you deal with that to get those teenagers who are often often they are a mess. Like you don't know at that age what you want and what is, everything is going on. So how do you do that?
A lot of times it's just listening to their perspective, understanding how they came about to saying like why they believe something or where their viewpoints come from. So really validating and listening and understanding them is the first step to really helping or working with a teenager, because at the end of the day, they're trying to find their identity, their independence. And so we want to validate that, but also dig deeper to understand where it's coming from. And then also ask them, are you open to hearing a different perspective? Or how would you like, if I shared something that I went through, would you be open to hearing that? And ask them that, because then it shows respect, but it also shows that you're not trying to push your agenda on them, but you're influencing them and trying to inspire them.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. So I want to go back to setting healthy boundaries and everything that has to do with that. So what are healthy boundaries?
So all of us develop our set of belief systems. And then in terms of our relationships, in order to get our needs met, we need a value system that comes from our beliefs and experiences and the way that we view the world or the way that we view relationships. And those values, we always recommend developing your top 5 values to operate from. Those values connect to our deeper needs, emotional needs within a relationship. But then when we can own our worth and get our values met from a place of setting boundaries within our connections, and we sound much more confident when we speak from a value system versus an emotional aspect or reaction from something that may have crossed our limits or upset us and set us off.
Yeah. So how can you find out what those values are? Because I've been on the path of self-development as well, and it's actually pretty hard to really think about what are my values, because often you would take over the values from your parents, like the belief systems as well. Like everything is, you are like a creation of your environment, of everything. So how do you find out what is truly you, who you are, and what your belief system is?
So a lot of times I think it's looking at what you value in your own personal life. Like when you're interacting with someone, what makes you feel happy about that connection or relationship? What do you value with that person specifically? So looking at a lot of our different types of relationships and trying to see, like maybe this person's really great at communication and you value that about them. So that could be a potential value. Or maybe someone's really good at integrity. They always follow through based on their actions, in regards to their word choices of words. And so looking at your relationships and what you value about them today can be a great way to start. But we can also look at past relationships that didn't maybe work out or didn't benefit us and figure out what was missing from that relationship as well. What needs were not being met based on that person. So if we look at some of our old, romantic relationships per se, we can see that, oh, this person wasn't great at being a loyal partner. Well, we might value loyalty then, because we want someone that's going to be committed and loyal and we can trust. So you can look at current relationships or past relationships to identify your top, 5 relationship values.
Yeah. Okay, great. That is really great advice. I took a different road. This one is so much easier. So yeah, no, that is great. So if you are in a relationship and you feel like you need to set boundaries, like how do you start setting boundaries in a relationship? Because you love that person and how do you communicate that in a normal way instead of getting into a fight and shouting to each other, and just being nice and say like, sorry, but
So having differences in a relationship is going to be normal. There's always going to be some sort of conflict when you have 2 different perspectives, 2 different people, belief systems coming together. And conflict is not necessarily a bad thing. It helps us find our differences and figure out how to find that common ground between the 2 individuals, which can be a specific boundary that needs to be set in order to reach a greater goal within the relationship. So boundaries are all about a we mindset. How are we solving this problem together as a couple, so we can move forward in a healthier functioning dynamic? And so sometimes, say you have one partner that prefers to communicate consistently all day long. They're very chatty, they're very conversational, they like to feel connected to their partner. So they're all about communicating. And you have one partner who likes to maybe communicate in the morning, and then they talk to their partner after work. Throughout the day, they prefer to focus on their work goals and not communicate as much. So they're less of a communicator. So you have 2 kind of opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of communication. So we have to find that common ground. And that sometimes requires a negotiation back and forth between the couple in terms of finding what works to meet both of their needs. So the one person that maybe communicates all day long might have to tailor back their communication, and the person who prefers not to communicate all day long might have to find a way that they can communicate on their lunch break or something like that. So we find that happy ground to meet both partners' needs, but still respects each partner in getting their need met and the relationship as a whole. And we would communicate from a place of value, saying, I understand you may not like to communicate as much, And I prefer to communicate what would work for you. So we start with discovery questions and asking them what works for them and what they're willing to bring to the table. And that's where the negotiation process starts, through discovery questions. So we're discovering and gaining insight about about the problem and about our partner to figure out what does work. And then we go into setting the boundary from there.
And when you're setting boundaries, you definitely want to use I and we statements, because you want to take ownership of your value, and you're trying to ask your partner to work with you from a we perspective versus I need you to do this. We don't want to demand, we want to ask, because we're more than that we respect that relationship. And we want to avoid using the word you or a me when we're trying to set a boundary, because then you're making it about yourself versus making it about the relationship. And we really want to make it a relationship problem, so that way we're not separating me versus you, as she said, it's we versus the problem.
Yeah, exactly. I love that, because you get into a relationship because you love each other and something attracts you to that other person. It's such a shame that I see so many relationships fall apart because they fail to communicate. They fail to communicate their boundaries and what they really want. But if you use different words, or you phrase it differently, like you said, and use I and we instead of me and you, and the blaming and all that you can have such a beautiful relationship. So what I'm curious about actually is, what is the biggest issue or the most common issue that you see in the couples that you coach?
It is a lack of communication and understanding their partner's needs. So they're reacting through behaviors versus really communicating what it is that they need, because that might be scary. It might feel like their partner is going to shut them down and reject them, so they just don't ask for what they need. Instead, they indirectly react through their behaviors. So the biggest problem is people are not communicating or owning their worth and what it is that they do need to feel valued and appreciated within the relationship and get their needs met.
Yeah, so they're sort of living in this like fear mindset versus a growth mindset. And when we truly value and believe in ourselves, it's much easier to be in that growth mindset and know that we deserve to be able to ask whatever it is that we want. But sometimes people are, hold themselves back because potentially maybe they asked for something in the past and they didn't receive it. So then they're more fearful to ask for it today. But it doesn't mean a past experience is going to relate to the present experience. And so we need to always remember that it might take a few tries to get to that alignment with our partner.
Yeah. So it's really important to work on yourself and then work on the relationship. So that's I think that's what people mean when they say, how can you expect someone to love you if you don't love yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't know. What do you think about that?
The relationship we have with ourselves sets the tone for every other relationship that we have. Because if we don't respect ourselves, we don't value ourselves, we don't love ourselves, then we're going to allow disrespectful behaviors from other people in our lives. And then we're not going to feel valued in those relationships or feel respected. And so this is kind of a behavioral pattern that this is a behavior pattern that happens with people pleasers, in terms of they're always externally trying to make everyone else happy. And so when they don't make themselves happy, they don't honor their own self-love, then they feel very drained by all their relationships that happen around them.
Yeah, but it is pretty difficult if you're a people pleaser. Like, how do you start taking more care of yourself and validate yourself? Do you have a tip for that, or how do you approach it yourself?
So when it comes to breaking people-pleasing habits, a lot of times what we need to do is take the habits that we're doing and just replace them with something more positive. And so learning to like the power of pause. If we immediately respond to someone and say, yeah, I can go ahead and do that, but it really doesn't work for our schedule. When we take that power of pause, we can say, is this something I want to do? Is this something that's going to benefit our relationship with this person? Or am I selling myself short and just doing what I typically would do in default and say yes to something without really
understanding if it's going to work for both people. And so learning to pause is so important, so we're not reactive. Also learning to respond to messages or requests when it feels better for us to articulate what it is that we can do this or we can't do this. Because if we're immediately just in that reactive mode, then we're operating on autopilot and we're not really using our critical thinking skills to assess if this is healthy or it's a mutual beneficial relationship. So a lot of times we need to really like just pause and dig a little bit deeper and sort of do some self-assessment with ourselves before we initiate further conversation.
Yeah, I love that. That's really powerful to have a pause. And I think we should implement that in a lot of other aspects in our lives as well, instead of just only when it comes to question and people pleasing, but to really pause and be in the present, asking yourself questions. Is it really what I want? Is it helping my goals? Is this aligning with my beliefs, with everything? Like, I think it's really, really powerful, like you said, to have that pause. It's amazing. I love it. I just had a question, but I forgot it. Because I had one when you were talking, because I love what you said, but I forgot it. I'm sorry.
I also think too, when it comes to like people pleasing, a lot of times people will feel guilty for saying no. And so in that moment, we need to understand too about ourselves. How can we feel guilty knowing that we actually deserve to be an equal partner in that relationship, whether it's a friendship or even like with a family member or even, a romantic partner or a business. Doesn't matter the type of relationship, but we shouldn't feel guilty for saying no if it doesn't align with our values and goals.
Yeah. So how can we, for the people who feel guilty about it, I can imagine that saying no is maybe too harsh or too direct. So how can we let people know what our boundaries are in a way? We already talked a bit about this before, but if you and I are in a conversation and you want to say no, but you don't really know how to do that, you don't want to hurt that other person's feeling. How can you still make sure that you let them know what your boundaries are without hurting their feelings?
So you can simply say, thanks for asking me. Unfortunately, I already have a previous engagement, but maybe next time I can, help you out in that moment. So you're saying something in a way where you're having like grace with your choice of words without just saying abruptly no. But you don't have to give too much information either. If you give too much information, that's an invitation for them to potentially like manipulate. If you say, well, I have to work from 2 to 5 because they want you to do something that afternoon with them, then they're like, oh, then you're available at 5 o'clock. So don't ever give too much information, but you can just say I'm unavailable due to a prior engagement, but maybe next time I can help you out. But thanks for asking or coming to me first, So you're complimenting them, you're thanking them, but you're also not giving too much information either.
Yeah, I love that. It's a good one. I know a lot of people work their way around it and come up with excuses, but this way, as you said, if you just don't give too much information, it's nice. The other person doesn't feel hurt and you set your boundary.
Correct. Less is more.
Yeah, I think, yeah. But sometimes we, as we are talking about communication, then we need to say more. So, right?
Well, not always.
So we have the 3 C's of communication that we always recommend following, because if we have really heightened emotion and a lot of conflict and we're just going off the rails, and we might flood our partner. So when it comes to the 3 C's of communication, we want to express ourselves using a calm tone of voice, so we are heard and our message is received. Because if we're like screaming or yelling or raising our tone of voice, it's going to potentially shut down the other person that's receiving the message. So the first C is calm tone of voice. The second one is a concise message. So we don't want to send, very lengthy text messages. We don't want to go on and on about ranting, because again, that other person might feel flooded emotionally and they might just shut down and not listen to what you're saying. So we want to say it in the least amount of words possible, so our message is heard and understood and is not confusing or misunderstood. And then we also want to use the last C is constructive. We want to use constructive, positive communication. So even though we're addressing our needs or saying, I don't feel valued or I don't feel respected when XYZ happens, we're letting them know where we stand. And then, but we're also finding a positive solution, such as, I don't feel respected when I don't, or valued when I don't hear from you all day. I value communication. How can we work on this together? What can we do as a couple to solve this problem? So we're always going to try to find a positive solution and be constructive towards what we need to do moving forward, that plan of action.
Yeah.
The 3 C's are calm tone of voice, concise message, and constructive communication in terms of the message you're sending.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I haven't thought about it in that way, but no, it's true. For me personally, I actually do that natural. So I'm very blessed with my relationship. But yeah, but for you, maybe this is too personal, so just say no if it's too personal. But how do you, because you have that knowledge, and do you guys have a relationship first of all? Are you in a relationship? Yeah. Do you use those tips in your relationship as well? Because I know sometimes, even though you have the knowledge, when it's about yourself, you sometimes are not listening to yourself. So how do you do it in your relationship?
So when it comes to relationships, we definitely operate from our 5 core values at all times in order to get our needs met and to feel valued and respected. She and I also we operate from love and logic versus emotion and ego. So this is, a lot of people get in their emotions. And then when you get in your emotions, that's operating more from your like ego, feeling like you're entitled to something.
Yeah, you're living in your head.
Right. So when we operate from love, which is our heart-centered thinking, we're operating from that we mindset. We're operating with understanding and compassion in a caring way that we're communicating, but we're also remaining logical because we want to find a solution to that problem. So we're sticking to the facts over our feelings in order to resolve something, because not much can be resolved from emotional outbursts.
Not to mention too, if you have conflict, it can be resolved much quicker and very quickly. And so if you value that relationship, you're going to be more inclined to really pause and think about what it is that you're saying, because you're trying to engage a positive outcome. And so I personally am fine bringing up differences, but I don't love to feel like uneasy in my connection, and I want to resolve things very quickly. So I'm definitely more likely to really think about something and implement it, and also mirror my partner's language, where my husband, he's definitely more of a very concise speaker. And so like, in a way, like we're mirroring each other's language, which makes it resolve much quicker. And there's no tension, there's no uneasiness, because we can just actually have a very logical conversation to resolve that much quicker, which is constructive, which you get to move on and not let it ruin your entire day.
Yeah, I can see myself in that as well. It's also because you want to be together, and what is it good if you are shouting to each other or if you are not listening to each other? I mean, I always say that it's a relationship is about wanting to be together, and you will do everything what it takes to be together. And you can only do that by open communication and by being clear of what you want, what you expect, and from the other person as well. Also what is important, what I believe is important, but I want your opinion on that, the love language, the 5 love languages. You probably know that, right? Do you use that as well, or do you use something else similar to it? Or
well, I would say our value system is our most prominent in order to feel valued and respected in the relationship. And I would say in order to get our love needs met, usually that just comes out in terms of kind of our personalities. But yes, we do believe in love languages in terms of further understanding your partner and what they need in order to feel loved. A lot of times people try to love their partner based on their love language, and their partner doesn't receive love in that manner. So say, for instance, you value acts of service, and so you like it when your partner does things for you. But then if you're always doing things for your partner, like maybe cooking dinner or, dropping off the laundry, whatever, dry cleaning, whatever it might be, acts of service, say you like those things, but they don't feel loved, and their love language is words of affirmation, but yet you're never telling them how much you like love them or appreciate them, then they're not going to feel loved in that relationship. So we always need to understand our partner's love language in order to make sure we're giving them love the way they prefer to receive love.
And a lot of times I think it's difficult too for men and women who experience this specifically in those types of relationship dynamics, because men can tend to be more action oriented and women can tend to be more like feeling oriented. And so a lot of times, depending on, let's say, for instance, the male is definitely more of an acts of service type person, but the female prefers words of affirmations, then there's, telling their partner, well, if you look at my actions, it shows you that I love you, but yet that woman's craving, either the compliment or I love you, or like, you mean so much to me. She's looking for those words of affirmations. They don't realize that sometimes those actions aren't being translated to that emotional component. And so it's really important that we do understand or ask our partner specifically what their love language is, and then sort of talk about it. Don't be afraid to have these discussions, because this is how it's going to grow your relationship and bring you closer to that emotional bond. And just ask, I appreciate you cooking dinner or doing the laundry. How about, sometimes just sharing with me like how you feel about me, from time to time. And we can find that balance, but just like communicating and sharing and asking for what we want. Because if we don't ask, we cannot receive.
Exactly. And even though you may be together for a really long time, you never know what's going on in the other person's head, right?
Correct. We cannot assume what the other person's thinking at all times. And so it's really important you do communicate and share.
Yeah,
sharing
exactly.
Caring,
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes it's also when you are too much in your own head, or you mean something, but it comes across completely different. And what I've experienced sometimes, luckily not so much, but sometimes my partner tells me like, oh, I don't feel appreciated by you. And I'm like, but I do appreciate you, and it's sometimes it's a great reminder again that, okay, no, I have to say it more and, really show him in his way what I mean, instead of thinking that I am appreciating him and not showing it the way he wants to or prefers to. So what are your biggest lessons when it comes to all relationships or life just in general? Like, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned so far?
I think our biggest lesson in life is that naturally she and I are shy empaths, and we learned long ago how to develop our inner voice and speak up to get our needs met. So long ago, in terms of our first real adult relationship, she and I didn't really we would voice our emotions, but we didn't voice what we needed to feel appreciated or respected or loved until we figured out how to really operate from a value system. So that's the biggest lesson that she and I learned in our own growth of relationships. And then that's why we came about helping others set boundaries and feel valued and respected, because it's very important to us. But like I said, as being empaths and kind of shy personality types, it took us a little bit to figure out what it was in order to really find and hone in on our inner voice and what that looks like in terms of communicating our needs.
I think also too is being patient with our partners, because we're learning about them and we can't ever expect them to be a certain way or do a certain thing. And so expectations lead to failures. So a lot of times we need to talk about, okay, what are our goals we're going to accomplish together? What are we going to work on as a team? And just knowing that, getting outside of your head, but being able to really just be patient and understand that things are going to happen, but you're not going to always get that, instant gratification. I think that's one of the biggest things people in the dating world, relationship world, they want that instant gratification. And that's not the way love works. Love is all about this like slow process, sort of like nature. It grows, by nurturing it, giving it the, sunlight, giving it the water, giving it, whatever nutrients or soil. And that's how relationships are. You got to build this strong foundation and take it one step at a time, because that's where connection happens, is in that present moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So if people want to work with you or want to learn more about relationships, how can they contact you, or how can you become their coach? How can they find you?
They can find us at entwinedlifestyle.com, and they can sign up for a complimentary discovery call to learn more about our services and how we can help them reach their relationship goals. We work with individuals personally in relationships, whether it's family or love, in resolving conflict and operating from their value system and setting healthy boundaries. And we also work with individuals in terms of performance coaching in their relationships at work as well, in terms of bettering their professional relationships. So
okay, that is great. I'll leave everything in the description so people can contact you. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the listeners?
They can always head to our website also to download our free boundary scripts. So we have examples of different types of scenarios and different boundaries that they can download for free. We also have our online boundary program, and later this summer, we'll be releasing our boundary book. So we're looking forward to that as well.
Congratulations, exciting. Okay, well, thank you so much. This has been, I hope, for the listeners, an eye-opener on how they can improve their relationships and have a better communication with themselves and their partner. So yeah, I really want to thank you both a lot for this conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and hopefully you now know how to set healthy boundaries. As always, if you want to know more information or want to work with our guest, in this case the amazing twins Jan and Jillian, you can find their details in the description box. Thank you so much, and talk to you next time.